Good evening, raw dealers. So, I have a bunch of virtual cards coming in the mail from a printer. I'm really excited about that. In the meantime, I wanted to share my Andre the Giant deck that's going to get some better virtual stuff going on soon, but I know that everybody is much more in practice than I am. So, I wanted to kind of share what I'm doing right now, kind of give some thoughts as to what's up, and hopefully I'm going to hear something back from somebody that's going to be interesting. In particular, though, the one card, I think it's called Blaze of Glory, is a backstage heat card, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what I'm liking to try and do with that versus what's possible. So let me move the regular deck out of the way. Blaze of Glory lets you get 6 heat cards and put them in the discard pile right away. So these are kind of my top choices. So I like Slap, just that I get to get something back, or I don't think I would ever want to draw a card, probably. Sizzling Clothesline. When it's in my discard, making my 0 Fortitude Heat Maneuvers multi is very, very strong and going to help someone like Andre really push through. In particular, because Andre lets you ignore the word complete on your opponent's reversals. Where is it? Yeah, completely. Yeah, so on Giant Eiffel Tower, ignore the word completely on all players' reversals and card effects, and your maneuvers are plus 2D. So you're going to be able to throw heat maneuvers for 5 or 6 and kind of get out of clumsy range. I know no one plays clumsy, and that's part of the point. Um, and then you can still have access to triangle choke and snap neckbreaker. So for some reason you see your opponent has plenty of strike reversals or is a superstar that has uh, a backlash deck strike reversal, you can lead with one of these instead. A headstrong to help get you up and running is always nice. And then I could see any of these being a second headstrong, but if you're trying to bridge up, getting into flip is going to give you access to a lot of specialty or unique maneuvers that you're running that are going to be good in niche situations. A little bit more on those maneuvers kind of as we go through the deck, but I really like that uh, flip is going to help you get there. I do question whether or not I'm not running enough um, big damage reversals that would let me punish people for not respecting what I grab off of flip instead of just trying to chain into bigger, more devastating things. Okay, so these are kind of the 6 I would grab for that. The pre-match that I'm going with here. So Andre's ability says you can't pack things, but the superstar logo gets around that. So Keenan family faction, you can pack it regardless. Uniques aren't affected by your opponent's card effects, which is always fantastic. Gives you a ton of options. And then my managed by Bobby the Brain Heenan would be permanent, which I can't pack that, so whatever. Um, and then they want to use that card, doesn't matter. Okay. Giant Eiffel Tower, so I mentioned the plus 2 damage. There's also an ace on this. Once during your turn, you can put it in your ringside and shuffle 8 cards from your ringside pile into your arsenal. It's a really nice last ditch effort, and if you've got Afterburn live, it can be really, really powerful. But removing all your heat cards for this is going to be potentially, self devastating here. And your opponent can hide it when you hide We Face Each Other as God Intended. Again, there's going to be a lot of specialty cards and situations for We Face Each Other. Part of the trouble here is if your opponent hides this and then grabs the once is enough, they will have an easy out to your multi things. Just kind of score that turn they might need to get you. Okay, so Heenan Family Enforcer can't be blanked any pre-match phase. No reason to not drop this during venue or feud, really. So your backstage cards can't be blanked. Phenomenal, critical, really helps against female superstars. Great for ensuring your Blaze of Glory is still good to go. Your opponent can't mess with your hand size. Again, fantastic for making sure you just don't get run over like a truck. And then when you play your superstar specific cards, the number of heat cards removed from the game for the heat trade is 0. So I don't think that applies with Giant Eiffel Tower because that's an ace that's not playing one of your cards. So keep an eye on this. Don't forget that you can safely recur things without removing all your heat stuff. And then ace, once during each of your turns, You can choose a maneuver that's not superstar specific, multi or RMS in your ringside, and randomly remove one other card in your ringside from the game and play the chosen maneuver as if from hand. Again, this is going to remove your heat stuff when it removes that other maneuver. Giant Chokehold. Your opponent almost certainly will know that you have this to reverse actions. So once you hit 20 Fortitude, you're just gonna totally mess people up. And unless if you're able to get them down low enough, this card can be treated as your win condition, because you're gonna just put actions as being offline for your opponent. So I'm not planning on playing Giant Brain Trust. I'm tempted, but I'm not seeing we're recurring the single card at 8 Fortitude, because you've got the Heenan Family Enforcer. But for 8 Fortitude, looking at your opponent's hand is nice. Getting the card back is nice. It just doesn't feel like it's going to be big enough. We Face Each Other as God Intended is absolutely must have. So you can hide this and go grab a card. Your opponent can't have like an alternate win via pinfall when this is out. I'm going to go through a bunch of cards, I guess, toward the end. Making a Colossal Connection. So these kind of work in 2 steps here that you want to use. Making a Colossal Connection first, perhaps, if you need to. Ignore your opponent's effects that would discard cards from your backlash. Blank or remove your free match from your ring, or prevent you from playing backlash cards. When you've got fewer cards in hand, your superstar specific actions can't be reversed from hand by non-unique cards. And then once during your turn, you may hide this card, put any number of cards from hand on the bottom of your arsenal, and draw until you have 8, basically. So, yeah, this is really, really strong. Wait, I feel like I've like missed something here. Sorry. So, yeah, you're gonna want to put this in the bottom, or put cards in the bottom that aren't useful in the moment, and kind of refresh your hand. That's pretty stunning in terms of the overall impact to the match. You're just going to be able to one of the effective ways of dealing with Andre is kind of removing his cards in hand so he can't use that final part of his ability working end your opponent's turn. This is going to reset your hand, and your opponent's going to have to basically succeed at one of the hardest things against your deck twice. Big and tough as any 2 men. There's just no reason to not pack this. If your opponent's going to use handicap match, is not going to be as good. Signature card, autograph session. Again, having an extra card in hand as Andre is unusually good, especially because your opponent has an enormous hand. You're going to bomb that hand with We Face Each Other. You want to have a signing appearance, got to improve your hand. 5th and 10th anniversary, because why not? Shenanigans, sweet. Don't pack the one that's good against Andre in case your opponent's not packing it for some reason. Okay, so that's backstage. So let's start going through the red. So there's no reason to not pack Divine Intervention. I'm waiting on the mail for my Legendary Defense. So Legendary Defense, I'm going to want to be packing Escape Move, Step Aside, and Break the Hold. It kind of makes you know I'm not going to have any Revolution of the Mind here. It's great to be back here. If you're already a fan favorite for Sizzling Clothesline, why not? Gotta say, out of play. 0 Fortitude sometimes reverses trademark finishers, also can remove devastating multis from the game. Pretty solid. Oversell Maneuver, you can afford to take the damage, draw some cards, get some heat. Blanking opponent's maneuvers can just be really out of control. So Booby Trap is errata to be 0 Fortitude. Going to stop somebody from doing something wacky during the pre-match. Also, just great that when your opponent plays a card that lets them see your hand, you can just pitch this and they lose 2 cards. If they're going to try and do something like Commissioner Rules, or one of the benefits on something they have just lets them peek at your hand, they're going to have a bad time. So Raw and Ready, great card. Like one of the reasons we would go Raw, honestly. It's kind of like getting to play 6 copies of Oversell, except this one gets you exactly what you're going to need. Fantastic way to make sure you've got the right stuff to throw maneuvers at your opponent turn after turn after turn and kind of go up the fortitude curve. Raw Deal Revolution is really strong card, just 2 fortitude. It's going to reverse a ton of trademark finishers, a ton of the more complicated maneuvers in the game. It's a unique reversal, which sometimes helps. Just really great to have. Coach says today's the day. Potentially weird pick because Andre doesn't get the benefit really on the overturn unless somehow you're able to get the action reversal out of your ring area. But being able to reverse a mid-match card and then plunge your opponent for 10 fortitude is really, really good. So get the F out. 2 copies and not 3 because most of the time you're getting rid of the completely part via one of your on cards texts. But it also just reverses trademark finishers for 4, which your heat maneuvers are going to get you there. So all you have to hit is usually 1 maneuver. Manage your fears times 3. We plan on shuffling this back in, or other reversals like it back in with Slap and some other heat cards. 3 copies of No Chance in Hell. It's just a fantastic action reversal, and Volley This doesn't really work for you on things that aren't 0 fortitude because you'd have to remove all your heat cards from the game. So before I mentioned that your action reversal is kind of your win condition, these 2 5 damage maneuvers, reversals, also frequently will be your win condition. So please keep these in mind. Obey is kind of weird because you're going to not be able to play heat maneuvers if this goes through. So you really need to have a strong game plan for what to do next if your opponent is not getting shut down by that. It's one of the absolute best things you can do against a volley deck if they don't have a way to blank it. In my day, maneuver, it was a maneuver. 0 fortitude reverses hybrids or multis. Completely reverses hybrids or multis. Frequently is not going to do so completely because your own card, but again, it's such a low cost way to reverse trademark finishers. Let's Wrestle already almost doesn't make the list for me. This is probably my top card to cut out of the deck, so I'd be curious to see what everybody else would play instead of this. It's great that you get to recur some cards, but you're usually not going to want to remove those for heat trait. Chain Heat, simple, effective, 0 fortitude, easy to include. One of the great things is your opponent's not going to really know how many you have, so even though it's only 1, they might kind of get cagey and start worrying that you're playing multiples once they've seen you overturn 1, and if they're able to play around it when they don't need to, that could be an advantage for you. It's not my fault being the biggest and the strongest. Really powerful to just turn it into 3 cards as an action, but also a fantastic reversal that when overturned, it's going to stop anything that's not a trademark. When it's in your ringside, you may discard 1 card, put it in your hand. You're almost never going to do that. But if you've got Afterburn live for some reason, it's going to be a great, quick way to remove those cards and force your opponent to have an answer to that ace. 3 copies of Volley This. It's just so good to do 2 damage to somebody and punish them for playing a 0 fortitude action. There's so many really good superstar specific 0 fortitude actions that being able to punish with this is nice. 2 copies of Don't Try This at Home. The punishing nature of removing someone's ace and or making them lose 2 cards is so incredibly good. Only 2 copies because it's just dead so frequently, it feels like. Okay, Immovable Object, superstar specific reversal, and it's also good as an action to get back things that are removed from the game. Really hard to not play this. Really fantastic that you, if things go in the right order for you, you're going to get 2 divine interventions per game at a minimum. 3 copies of Sidewalk Slam. I just like punishing people for playing things that can't be reversed. If that playing irreversible moves is going to be one of the ways that someone's going to try and burn through your 100 cards, make them pay the price. Giant Knee Smash. When you are a legend, as Andre is, this card is minus 16 fortitude. As a maneuver. And then as a reversal, when you're a legend, reverse any non-unique, non-maneuver card. So actions, really. Could do antics, but we're not going to play that format. So yeah, for 8 for 8, and then draw cards, put cards on the ring side underneath. Just an incredibly punishing and devastating card. Um, I think you're more likely to use this earlier. It's going to help you kind of bridge into your better stuff. It is one of the great things you can grab with Flip, as I mentioned before. So Give and Take is a card I could be convinced to remove for sure. But all players kind of recur 2 cards, so maybe you don't do that, but your opponent does, which you can live with. When this card is in your ring area, whenever your opponent plays a card that allows him to search his arsenal for any number of cards, you can search your arsenal for one non-unique card, reveal it to him, put it in your hand, and shuffle your arsenal. You're going to be able to grab some phenomenal reversals with this. You're going to be able to grab some like Sidewalk Slam. You can go and grab No Chance in Hell, Manager Interferes. Just so many really solid picks. I do wish that, Andre had a superstar specific, non-unique, but that's a lot to ask for. So just being able to kind of keep pace with your opponent on searching out good stuff is really nice. Drawing Extra Heat is, here because we're heal, but overall not a strong card. Draw a card, your opponent discards 1 and overturns 2. But when you bomb their hand with We Face Each Other as God Intended, if you know they're playing a deck that does not have access to a 0 Fortitude action reversal, and they didn't grab an Ego Boost, 0 Fortitude action reversal in their Backlash deck, they don't have rules refs out. They must answer this, and if they can't, now you're at 2 cards, they're at 0. They've overturned 2. They're probably not overturning a reversal, and you are about to get on the board with Fortitude here. Because you've already got heat cards in the discard pile, it might not matter what you play from here, but it leads to a really strong chain of events in some situations. 2 copies of That's Broken. Great for putting something devastating like Don't Try This at Home underneath. Great for playing before you do We Face Each Other as God Intended. That way you effectively have 3 cards in hand and your opponent doesn't. The fact that your opponent can't completely reverse these with luck of the draw because of your pre-match cards is really, really phenomenal. Activate is also a great pick for We Face Each Other as God Intended. You're usually not going to get to retrieve something, but being able to just bomb their ace and continue your turn is really good. I could see an argument for playing Escape the Rules instead of this, but it's not always going to be totally satisfying. Ego Boost. When your opponent causes you to discard this card, draw 2 cards, it's just really good. Especially when you are able to search it out with things like Give and Take, or I don't think Ron Ready get it. Never know. You can get it with Ron Ready, right? Yeah, because it's any card. Yeah. So getting Ego Boost off of Ron Ready kind of guarantees you're going to have cards to get to continue your turn. Eighth Wonder of the World, fantastic card. Super specific, very powerful. Play it. Twisted Smile can be really, really good after you've played your cards off of We Face Each Other's God Intended, because your opponent's not going to have the cards to put underneath, and they're going to have a really, really hard time most of the time reversing a 9 Fortitude action. Some hybrid cards here. Dynamic Finisher. It's big, it's damaging, it's a trademark finisher. You should play it. Princess Bride. I like that you get to play this, and it's cute and it's fun, but you're really usually getting the maneuver and not the Fortitude 0. Sorry, and not the action running with the female's name on it. It's just not the style of deck that I'm playing. So I could see cutting this, but overall getting a Fortitude 0 maneuver is still pretty good. It can get you Sidewalk Slam. It can get you a maneuver your opponent might not have an answer to. Even Maniacal and Mania are both just like game enders in my mind. If you hit Egomaniacal and then are able to just kind of pile on the heat moves, your opponent's not going to have any cards left to do anything with. Okay, we've got Wastelock. It's just really good to blank stuff sometimes. I'm hoping there's a better blanker in virtual, but someone's gonna have to tell me what the answer is there. Sometimes the perfect card to get off of We Face Each Other's God Intended, but also great that you can get it with things like flip, grab, or run ready. So you got kind of get 9 ways to search for it, which is pretty ridiculous. Handcuffed, great heal card. Your opponent can play oversell. Uh, when they reverse from their hand, they discard 2. When you successfully play it, you draw up to 3. And then if your opponent's playing a face deck, they actually have to discard cards to play face cards. So you want to mill your opponent's hand to dust. So this is going to be an effective way to do that for some matchups. 3 copies of grab. If your opponent just doesn't have stuff to do, you're going to be able to flip this into a good resource, especially when their hand size is low because of the chain trait. You can also use this to discard some of your heat maneuvers, get another chain move like a second copy of grab or ankle lock or some of the other things I'm going to show, while you're getting a reversal, getting an oversell, getting something to kind of net you that advantage that you're going to need for during your opponent's turn. Ankle lock is a great pick for when we face each other's God Intended. If they don't have a way to reverse it, you're going to eliminate their hand, and then you're going to be able to bridge forward with other things. So you could go like ankle lock, grab, get a card that you're going to use as a reversal. Then you do the flip out of your discard pile. Keep going. Pretty neat that you can kind of do that. Okay. Giant Headbutt. Not a great pick for We Face Each Other's God Intended. If your metagame has a ton of luck of the draw, if your metagame has a ton of face with Once Is Enough. Otherwise, it's totally crazy because you're going to be able to get something you want to discard, like a Sizzling Clothesline maybe, or a Zero Fortitude Maneuver even. And when you're hitting for 10 with 2 stun, getting any card you want, your opponent is in a huge problem zone. Just like what a good maneuver. Also, you're able to just play it when you know you don't have any odds in your hand, so the risk of losing something is not so big. Now let's look at some maneuvers with odd fortitude. So Gut Punch Body Slam is great because you're able to sometimes get up on fortitude over your opponent and then discard key cards for their strategy. 2 copies of Atomic Driver because searching out uniques is great. These are pretty easy to go get because of the chain trait. Also, just things like flip and grab can go grab them without the chain trait. Okay, so Atomic Spinebuster. Overturn 5, discard your backlash deck. Discarding your backlash deck, not so bad because you got the copies of Coach. So maybe if you don't want to mill so much, you just go for this. But yeah, sorry, it's a high risk maneuver instead of grapple. But yeah, so you're going to be able to play this as a high risk when you normally can't even pack high risk maneuvers. Pretty nice. The finisher, 20 damage, going to stop removing the game cards from coming back. Hurts you a little bit more than it hurts your opponent, but it's a multi-trademark finisher, pretty solid. Giant Bear Hug. You're going to prevent your heat stuff from getting removed, but it's pretty nice to get some stuff back. And now let's look at the heat stuff. So before I mentioned Let's Wrestle already, it was kind of on the chopping block for me. Most of the heat stuff I would feel really strongly about keeping. So the 9 heat reversals are like non-negotiable for me. So the other copy of Headstrong is in that other pile. 3 copies of Leave Me Alone. Then we got 3 slaps because 1 is in my 6 that I'm discarding. 3 triangle chokes. 3 snap neck breakers because 1 is in here. And 2 copies of Spinning Kick. And that might seem like a ton of Zero Fortitude maneuvers, but you absolutely need to get on board and start doing stuff with those, number 1. Number 2, they're all going to count as slap when they're in your ring area for Atomic Body Lock. So you're actually going to be able to shuffle in an enormous number of cards and really resist getting pinned by having them. Afterburn, it's just a weird way to sometimes win the game. 0 for 1, which isn't crazy. When you begin your turn with this card in your ring area, once during each of your turns, you may discard a heat card. and your opponent overturns cards equal to the number of heat cards that have been removed from the game. Your opponent kind of has some time to deal with this, but if they're not playing something to stop on the overturn besides one or two copies of Booby Trap or one or two copy or the copy of Divine Intervention, this is going to blow through some people sometimes and catch them off guard. Sucker Punch, you're guaranteed to actually discard a really important card. So Coach says is good in this situation to kind of get it back. But overall, it's just such a strong card. It's tough to ignore. We've got Full Nelson. So this is one of the cards I could really see dropping. You can shuffle a card from your ringside pile in your arsenal. Before the new Heat card, I think this was more tempting. But it's still an elbow range, even with the +2 damage from you. I could see an argument for Full Nelson not making the cut. So we've got Flip. Yeah, so Flip is really, really good to try and bridge into that better stuff. But it's not a 3 of. It's just, yeah, it's a little good. We've got Side Chinlock again, something I could see cutting. We've got Leg Lock. We've got Military Slam. So Military Slam is just nice to play after Leave Me Alone, because you don't want to be stuck down with the smaller maneuvers. We've got a second copy of Sizzling Clothesline in case something happens to the first one, and 3 copies of Atomic Body Lock. So yeah, I think that the 3 cards that I'm pretty obviously not feeling confident on are Full Nelson, Side Chinlock, and Let's Wrestle Already. So yeah, I'd love to know in the comments what people think is going to be better than these. Until next time, Raw Dealers, have a good